all living creatures want to get to that point where they can have some sexy time. Yo, mga kabayo, what's up, and welcome to Inay, thank you, our time and space to learn life lessons from lessons about life. From the previous episode, we've learned that life may have come from a bunch of molecules that decided to combine together, maintain that complexity, as well as just replicate and change over time. Jump back to present day, here we are, living our best lives. But what for? Why are we alive? That can be answered in so many different ways depending on who you ask. So for the purposes of this discussion, we are going to try to answer that question based on what the natural sciences show us. Not to say that the answer to that question cannot be found in a spiritual context. We are just trying to keep it strictly science. So if you want to know about the purpose of life from a different perspective, from a spiritual perspective, then this is not the channel for you. But for those of you who are looking at it or who would like to answer that question from a more scientific perspective, then welcome. In biology, we have life cycles. We know that all living organisms, they start out as babies and then they grow up and then they die. Something is born, it consumes energy so that it can grow and survive. Once you get to that age when you are ready to get to business, go. Make a copy of yourself and then you can die. We see this in plants. There are certain species of plants where they flower and then they bear fruit. The fruit has ripened, it's been eaten, the seeds have been dispersed. Seeds equals baby plants. Then the plant that bore the fruit dies. There are certain plants that do that. Salmon, they swim upstream, lay their eggs and sperm, and they spread it all over the water, made babies. After that, they die, they get eaten by bears, whatever. Certain species of spiders or mantises where after mating, the female eats the guy, eats the dude. They're like, you've given me your sperm, that's it. I don't need you anymore. And the guy is like, fine, eat me. And he's willing to do that because he knows that he gives his body as energy for the female to make sure that she has enough so that she can lay the eggs and make more spider babies or mantis babies. That's a very sort of selfless/selfish thing to do when you think about it. As soon as they've done the whole sexy time, that's it. It's done. Technically then, the purpose of life is to live long enough until you have ensured that a copy of yourself continues to live. As living organisms, that's kind of how we become immortal, by passing on copies of ourselves onto the next generation so that we sort of live in them. That's biology. Now the 5-year-old in you might ask,
why can't we just live forever and not have to make a copy of ourselves?
Maybe. It's not really about making sure you or your DNA live forever. That's where physics and chemistry come in. Y'all remember the second law of thermodynamics? The law of entropy? The universe will tend towards just evenly spreading out its energy. The Big Bang, from this very small, hot, dense, energetic state, eventually expanding and still to this day expanding. The universe is expanding, the energy is just spreading out. But the universe is so big. Kind of difficult to put ourselves to scale if we look at how vast the universe is. So maybe we can just start with the sun, because that's the biggest and closest ball of highly packed energy. The nuclear fusion that's happening just radiates in the form of light and heat until such time that all of this energy just dissipates and the star dies. The star doesn't have enough energy anymore to just burn, so dead. But because the sun is very massive, it will take a while for all of this energy to spread. Despite this huge sun that's just wasting away its energy into the universe, some of the energy is inadvertently transferred into other molecules that exist in the universe. And these other atoms and molecules, therefore, when they get hit by the energy from the sun in the form of light or heat, they absorb this energy and then they become energy dense. So they take in that energy. And because of the law of entropy, eventually that thing that absorbed the energy will soon have to release it somewhere. And one way that atoms release energy is by forming chemical bonds. So if you can imagine the electrostatic force that attracts the protons to the electrons, these opposite charges are naturally attracted to each other. We've learned this before. So there's really little to no energy that's needed to keep them closer together. Think of like two balls that are on top of a hill. Once you get them rolling down, there's really not much effort. Boop! And then they're gonna be sticking together at the bottom. Once they come together, they don't need any of that energy anymore. And they're just going to, if you don't use it, you lose it. You lose it. When you break chemical bonds, this time it's the other way around. You need to put in energy to take these naturally attracted charges apart. Think of the two balls on the hill again. This time they're at the bottom part. If you want to separate them, you're going to have to push them back up the hill. And pushing huge balls back up a hill takes more effort than just letting them roll down the hill and just collide, right? When atoms create chemical bonds, you get molecules. And then these molecules, if they happen to have some electrons attracted to the protons of other floating molecules out there, they can combine to form more complex stuff, like life. If forming bonds gives rise to more organized molecules, and forming bonds releases energy, then why are we, very huge assemblages of atoms and molecules, why are we considered energy dense? In living systems, chemical bonds are formed by complex molecules. For example, you have sugars, fats, proteins. If you put two things together with just a small bit of glue, not a lot of glue, just a teeny tiny bit, you don't really need a lot of effort to sort of break them apart. That's kind of how sugars, proteins, and fats work in living systems. They're fairly easy to break compared to the products of metabolism. For example, carbon dioxide, oxygen. So you have a sugar molecule, and then you rearrange them to form stronger chemical bonds. When you form these carbon dioxide bonds, remember, forming bonds releases energy. So you form these really strong bonds that releases a lot of energy, just a lot of energy. You did require a bit of energy to break a weak bond, but that energy isn't really a lot compared to the energy that you gained from rearranging those molecules to form stronger bonds and releasing more energy. We have a lot of these weakly held molecules. We have a greater potential to produce larger amounts of energy. That's why we're energy dense. If all of the carbon in me could be at one single time just converted into boom, pure energy, I would probably destroy the entire Philippines. Just atomic bomb level boom. That's how much energy we have. Except that our bodies are really good. They can release this energy in teeny tiny amounts. I love saying teeny tiny. Instead of boom, all of us, we're really just constantly releasing energy into the environment. The next question is, why are living systems described as low entropy? When you say that something is low entropy, it means that the energy is kind of clumped together instead of spread out. High entropy means it's more dispersed, it's more evenly spread out. Life is considered low entropy because living things constantly try to accumulate energy. Nom, 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 nom. Whenever we exhale, carbon dioxide comes out, bonds are formed, energy is released in the form of heat. That's why we're warm. in exchange, we do try to replace all of that lost energy by getting more. We are, in essence, actively rebelling against our body's natural tendency to spread energy. The law of entropy says that energy will tend towards spreading out. Then, aren't we a violation of the law of thermodynamics because we are organized? The energy is packed in us, so we are low entropy. How come? How are we alive? There's something wrong with thermodynamics. No. It's a law. The energy that you got to organize yourself, there's also an equivalent amount of energy that is released and that is spread out. By virtue of existing, we are increasing the spread of energy everywhere else in the universe. So the entropy of the entire universe is still therefore increasing. When we think again about the purpose of life, could it be that biology is one of the most effective ways to amplify the spread of energy throughout the universe? When you think about the vastness of the universe, however, it's not as if what we are doing right now contributes massively to the purpose of spreading energy. But if this mechanism were indeed very effective in spreading energy, what if we're not the only ones alive? Who knows? In other star systems, maybe there are other similar life-like mechanisms that just make everything faster. And mind-blowing thing, all of the energy on Earth really ultimately comes from the sun. We are just copies of the sun. The sun is trying to spread its energy. Somehow, some of the energy hits the molecules in the universe, forms bonds, forms life, spreading its energy again. So are we simply just energy flowing from high density to low density? Is that kind of like the cycle of it? Is that really why we're here? This is ultimately what nature shows us. All living things will die. All the energy will spread out. And when we know that that is the reality that science has showed us, perhaps things in the universe happen because that's just how they happen. There doesn't have to be any reason for it. It might seem very depressing to learn that that's really what just happens in nature, and that nature really doesn't give a and that we are the only ones that really give a The concept of purpose, reason, motivation, of all of these things, that's a very human thing. But for the rest of the natural world, we're not really sure if that's something that they also seek. Do these things around us ever ask why they are alive? We're not really sure because we're not them. But at least, based on the reality that we experience, it seems like we are the only creatures that are worried about the purpose of our existence. And I think that's something that we should enjoy as well. It's something that makes us unique, but also it's something that causes us a bit of misery and a bit of suffering because we try to pursue things that perhaps do not exist. Akala mo meron, pero wala. 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 And is it wrong if there's no reason? No. As Neil deGrasse Tyson puts it, the universe has no obligation to make sense to you. With this realization, I hope that many of us appreciate our lives even more because we do know that the time we have here is fleeting. It's not going to last forever. We're eventually going to break apart. That's thermodynamics. That's entropy. We cannot escape that destiny. So maybe the more important takeaway for us is not so much to find the purpose of life, but really to just enjoy life. Because sometimes we're so caught up in pursuing things. It's like there are blinders and we just don't notice all the wonderful things around us that are happening. The fact that we're just able to breathe. The fact that when you look at your hand and wow, my hand is really sweaty right now. But yeah, when you look at your hand and realize that wow, how is all of this sweat coming out of my hand? Or just all of the grooves and all of the lines on your fingertips, your fingerprints. How amazing that all of that was just formed by these atoms and molecules coming together. Even though it is in the process of just spreading the energy out into the world. I think it's amazing that these non-living atoms, they're combined to form an organism that is capable of being aware of itself, being aware that it's made of individual components that are not capable of this level of self-awareness. Oh, paano naman kayo mga kabayo? What life lessons have you learned today? Leave it in the comments right below. If you would prefer to have a more concrete answer to why you are here on this earth, and if you think that this answer does not suffice, by all means, there are so many ways, so many means, so many avenues you may go down the spiritual path. So whatever floats your boat, who is to say? I'm not here to dictate what your purpose in life should be, or where you should be looking to find your purpose in life, or if you should be looking at all. And that's it, Pansit. Kita-kits, mga bagits, Inay. Thank you.